You are the heavyweight champion. You have the fastest hands, the loudest voice, and you are arguably the most dangerous man on the planet. Everyone wants to be near you. Every camera is pointed at your face. And then, one single decision takes it all away. Your title is stripped. Your license is revoked. Your prime years, the years you worked your entire life for, are erased in an instant. Most men would bend under that pressure. They would apologize, comply, and shrink until they became invisible. They would spend the rest of their lives complaining about what could have been. But Muhammad Ali didn't. He didn't view those lost years as a tragedy, but as a testimony. He understood that a crown is not something given by a boxing commission, but something you carry in your soul. He lost his wealth, his fame, and his career, but he never lost himself. And that is why, decades later, we still speak his name with awe. Long before the world validated him, Ali made a declaration: "I am the greatest." Notice the timing. He didn't say it after the belt was around his waist. He said it while he was still a skinny contender from Louisville. People laughed. They called him arrogant, delusional, even a fool. But Ali understood a truth that most people will never grasp. If you wait for the world to tell you who you are, you will wait forever. The world is too busy with its own noise to recognize your genius until you force it to see. Ali wasn't just describing his reality. He was programming it. He treated his mind like a garden. If you don't plant the seeds of greatness, the weeds of doubt will take over. He once explained, "It's the repetition of affirmations that leads to belief. And once that belief becomes a deep conviction, things begin to happen." Think about your own internal dialogue. Most people spend their lives reciting their failures like a mantra. They wake up and remind themselves of their debt, their exhaustion, and their limitations. Ali did the opposite. He lied to his ego until his reality had no choice but to catch up. He spoke from a place of destiny, not doubt. Ask yourself, honestly, do you talk about who you truly are, or who you fear you might become? Then came the ultimate test. At the height of his career, Ali was drafted to fight in the Vietnam War. At that moment, he wasn't just fighting a man in a ring. He was fighting an entire empire. He looked at the system and said, no. He knew the backlash would be brutal. He knew they would call him a traitor. He knew the same fans who cheered his knockouts would now spit on his name in the streets. But he did not kneel. For 3.5 years, Ali was a warrior without a battlefield. He went from stadium lights to courtrooms. He went from making millions to struggling for rent. But his spirit remained untouched. He stood his ground and said, "I would rather stand with God and be judged by the world than stand with the world and be judged by God." This is the part we often ignore. We want the glory of the legend, but we don't want the isolation of the martyr. Here is the uncomfortable truth. If your beliefs never cost you anything, they are not beliefs. They are just preferences. A preference is something you hold when it's convenient. A belief is something you hold when it's expensive. Ali paid the price in gold and blood. Would you stand firm if the world tried to erase your future? Ali didn't just defeat his opponents physically. He destroyed them mentally before the first bell even rang. He knew that a fight is won or lost in the locker room, in the hallway, and in the stare-down. He predicted the exact round they would fall. He composed poems about their defeat. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. His hands can't hit what his eyes can't see. People thought it was just showmanship. It wasn't. It was psychological warfare. By being so certain of his victory, he sowed the seeds of uncertainty in his enemies. Certainty is destabilizing. When an opponent sees a man who is not afraid to lose, they realize they are fighting someone they cannot break. Confidence is a form of pressure that most people cannot handle. Ali understood that your presence is your first weapon. He never entered a ring hoping to survive. He entered expecting to dominate. He understood that. He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life. If you are afraid to look like a fool, you will never be a master. You must be willing to speak your truth even when your voice shakes. By 1974, the world thought Ali was finished. He was older, slower, and facing a young destroyer named George Foreman. Foreman wasn't just a boxer, he was a force of nature. Everyone predicted a knockout. They were right, just not the one they expected. Ali did the unthinkable. The rope-a-dope. For 7 rounds, he leaned against the ropes and let Foreman land hundreds of brutal punches. To the crowd, it looked like suicide. To Ali, it was a trap. He absorbed the punishment, leaning in and whispering in Foreman's ear. "Is that all you got, George? My grandmother hits harder than that." He was stealing Foreman's confidence with every punch he took. That wasn't weakness. That was calculated endurance. He let his opponent empty his soul into his gloves. And in the 8th round, when Foreman's arms were like lead and his spirit was spent, Ali exploded. There is a lesson here for your darkest days. Strength is not always about attacking. Sometimes greatness is the ability to endure the storm until your moment arrives. You don't always have to win the first round. You just have to be the one standing in the last one. Years later, a different kind of opponent arrived. One that he couldn't outbox or outtalk. Parkinson's disease. The man who moved like lightning now moved with a tremor. The man who spoke in poems now struggled to whisper. Yet, in 1996, when he stood with shaking hands to light the Olympic torch, the entire world stood still. There was more power in his trembling hand than there ever was in his fist. Why? Because true greatness is not measured by the strength of your muscles, but by the durability of your spirit. Ali's final transformation was his most powerful. He moved from being a king who demanded service to being a servant who gave hope. He showed us that even when the body fails, the legend can still shine. He famously said, "Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth." He realized that the greatest wasn't the one who stood over a fallen man, but the one who reached down to pick others up. Life will eventually take things from you. It is a debt we all owe. It will take your comfort, your image, and your security. It might even take your physical strength. But there is one thing you must protect at all costs: your identity. Ali lost titles. He lost millions. He lost years of his life. But he remained the king of his own mind. He proved that no government, no disease, and no opponent can take away who you chose to be. So, when the world pressures you to shrink, when fear whispers that it's safer to comply and stay quiet, remember the man who refused to bow. When everything is stripped away, the job, the money, the status, and the lights go out, who are you? Stand there, unmoved, unapologetic, unbroken. Be a legend. This journey does not end here. If Allie's unshakable will has awakened the sleeping giant within you today, you are no longer just a spectator. We are a community that refuses to kneel, building our minds like fortresses and resurrecting the greatest spirits of history in the middle of today's chaos. Help us spread this unbreakable energy to the world by liking this video, and take your place among the legends by subscribing to the channel. Remember, the world does not remember those who blend into the crowd. It remembers those who carve their own path, even in the eye of the storm. You are not just a name. You are a legend waiting to be built. Take your place now to become the emperor of your own story and walk with us on this ancient path. Until we meet in the next legend, guard your mind, set your soul free, and never bow down. Mindset of Legends.